Well, welcome back. I'm Derek Strauss with Gavroshe, and this is a continuation of a discussion I'm having with Plein. Caitlin is with Clayco, and she's the VP of Data Analytics and Engineering. And if you're just seeing this as a first glimpse into our conversation, understand that this is segment 2 that we're in now. So you want to go back and check out segment 1 as well, because that kind of sets the stage for the discussion we're about to have. Be sure to pick up both segments. All right, so Caitlin, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and let's just jump in then. You highlighted in the first segment some of the issues that you've had to solve for in the past in order to deliver actionable data and analytics and insights. How has using a data catalog helped you, to achieve those goals? And what has your approach been to implementing the technology and getting it adopted by the organization?
Sure. So it's interesting. So I've found, in short, that using a data catalog really helps bring together both the data professionals and the business professionals. What it does is it allows for this sort of common ground of business to be able to see what kind of data do we have available, how can that be used for reporting analytics, and also some visibility into how the data professionals understand the business context around the data. But if I step that back into my direct lived experience around data catalogs, it's been a really interesting thing. So usually, and I say usually, but I've worked only in organizations that have been around for quite a while. So at organizations that have been around quite a while, there's usually a lot of data, mountains of data that have never been cataloged. And depending on the types of applications that created that data, maybe they also didn't have any metadata as part of the application. And so it's not this simple activity of hooking up the data catalog to the metadata and, off you go. All of a sudden, magic, your data is cataloged. So there's usually a sort of business case that you need to make to get after putting time and resource effort around getting this mountain of data cataloged. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about kind of the pros and cons of that business argument, the cost benefit analysis. And really what you have is, what tends to happen is your data catalog is distributed into the heads of all of your analysts. And everyone has a little piece of the puzzle, and that creates a couple of problems. There's a vulnerability to that. People move on, right? People go on vacation. So there's also an inefficiency. It might take a long time to find the right person who has the bit of knowledge that you need. And then if you need to start over, you have a lot of your analysts kind of researching and re-researching this information on a per project basis, where instead what you could have is this data catalog that creates all of the documentation for everyone to quickly look up. And I've found that in some cases, there's so much of an emphasis on not wanting to slow down any sort of analytical project-based effort that, this is kind of seen as technical debt. We'll just keep on keeping on the way we've been doing it. And I like to talk about it in terms of what I think is a pretty universal corollary, which is think about your local library and think about all of the books in the collection at the library. And, if you're of a certain age, you know about the card catalog. Or if you're younger than that age, you know about the digital catalog. But the point is, the books are labeled on their spines that create an organizational system so that you can understand which books are in the library collection. What are those books about? Where might I find the book that I'm looking for? And it really helps you kind of get a lay of the land of what's available, how to find it, what it means. If you have 20 books on the same topic, it'll help you figure out the right book for your purpose. And that's exactly what we're doing with the data catalog across our data lakes or kind of our consolidated databases. And so, an important part of that is, similar to the library where you have kind of the details around where specifically to find this book, you also have the what is it about, and that's just like technical metadata, which is kind of like, what type of variable is it? Is it a string or is it an integer? And also business metadata, which is more about what process created this, which application created it, what does it mean to the business? And so a really important part of that data catalog is something called the business glossary. So that's kind of like a glossary of domain terms and language that helps, us as data professionals start to learn and understand the data in the context of the business, which is just so absolutely critical. And I worked at an agency where I worked for various Fortune 500 companies across lots of different industries. And so that set me on a path of learning a little bit about a lot of different companies. And then I spent almost a decade at a company that was in the transportation industry. So I built up my knowledge bank about things like car rental and car sales, those sorts of things. And now that I'm in construction, which is Clayco is a design build firm. So we have the architecture side, we have the design side, we have virtual construction, design construction. We have the actual construction and various other entities. So what I've been doing over the last 18 months or so is really building up my knowledge bank of what are those business processes that create this data in the first place, and what's happening in those processes that help me leverage the data to tell a story that's relevant and useful to the business. And having the data catalog is just a game changer when it comes to the business and technical professionals working together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so important, as you say, to have the business and the technical side of metadata and the harmony between them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I mean, trying to get people to understand the cost benefit around that is a challenge initially, but once you find the right way to tell that story, it just opens everyone's minds, So yeah,
And
go ahead.
oh, so I was just going to say, and you can take different approaches to it, because usually your data professionals have an understanding of which of your data sources are used most often. So you don't always have to do the full mountain. You could do just or I'll, switch metaphors here, the tip of the iceberg, right? That's above the water, because we know that that's the most important. So there are different ways to break it down. Yeah. And I've found in implementing the data catalog at Clayco that the effort really wasn't as arduous as, everyone kind of thought it was going to be in the planning of the work.
That's good. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because sometimes it can seem daunting, but you're right. Once you actually find that it's kind of golden nugget that you can get everyone interested in, that's a hot business topic at the time, and it just suddenly everyone's in. I'm in all the way. So Yeah, but the other thing that's interesting is just how you put it across. You used the word story, and the ability to tell a story, and of course the language in which you employ to tell a story is so important. How have you found that just using plain business language, contributes to resolving a lot of these things?
Sure. So that has been a really kind of interesting theme in my career. And I've found, so the data team is a shared service, right? I like to say we kind of, we only exist because the business exists and creates this data in the first place, right? And so we're working with a lot of different business professionals who are experts in their area, right? That might be marketing and sales, or finance and accounting, or talent management. And those are usually transferable no matter what domain you're working in. And then you have sort of your specialty areas. So where I am today, right, that would be around like construction project managers are excellent at managing the project of construction and all of the different components that need to come together and sort of sequence in to keep everything running on time. What I've found is at the end of the day, you really need your data professionals who are skilled in how do I analyze data and how do I work with data, whether that be kind of ETL or cleansing and quality and creating different KPIs and calculations. You really need that group of folks to learn the craft of the business and learn the language of the business, because I've watched it over and over again when data is presented in sort of the way we all learned in, grade school, middle school, high school math, as, charts that talk about such and such over time, and you've got this chart and it might be properly labeled. You watch the the business consumer look at that chart and kind of go through a translation of, okay, if I'm looking at this factor over time, what that means in my business process is, and it just, you see some people just kind of give up, honestly. And so what we've started to do is, especially on our dashboard and our data visualizations, is we've started to make the title a business question, but we took it a little half step further. It's not just a business question. It's the kind of business question that you might hear when two people cross each other in the hallway, and it's just a very conversational, less formal way of saying, like, hey, what's happening with, XYZ in the business, and or just, they wouldn't even say in the business, right? And so we really kind of work with these titles, and the idea is, and of course, when we're testing them out, we're getting together with various types of business consumers to say, did we use the right word? Is this how you guys would say it? If you read this question, what does that mean to you? And it's, really an important part of our process. And what we like to say is, hopefully when you get in, especially with a dashboard, you can see within, minutes, under 5 minutes, what is this about? What is it telling me? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it getting better or worse? Do I need to do something? What should I do? And really just taking that burden of translation and analysis off of our consumer, so that they get what they need right away and they understand it right away. one thing that we've really worked on at Clayco with our dashboards is even if I'm not a project manager, I should be able to go into a project manager dashboard and totally get what it's about. Where the way a lot of dashboards I've seen, not just at Clayco, but in prior roles, read is sort of like, oh, this is a lot of information and there are a lot of factors here, but I don't have any kind of context to understand really what it's speaking to, what are the questions that it's answering, and if this is, a good indicator or a bad indicator for what's going on in the business.
Yeah, that's really well said. That is really well said. So often when you go into the domain of a specialist, you're confused because it's just so much specialist speak as opposed to plain English speak that it's just like, what is this person saying? And of course it creates all sorts of barriers to really fully understanding what's going on and what we think is going to happen next. So yeah, I think great approach to really creating a game changing kind of environment for people to understand what they're seeing and be really, it comes back to the whole theme that you've been discussing with us, which is making things actionable, so it doesn't have to go through this translation. And people give up halfway through the translation process because it's like too much. So yeah, very exciting and well done.
Thank you.
So Caitlin's kind of stepping back from this and just kind of thinking about our audience. And there may be some people that are hearing this type of thing for the first time and wondering, how do they take this and what would be the next thing that they would do? What would you say is the single most important takeaway that you'd like to leave for our audience as we wind this up?
Sure. So really, I would say with the theme, I think the single most important thing is just making sure that the data analytics team has a really clear understanding of the business process and business planning. What are the different goals and roadmaps of each department in your company, and what are they trying to achieve? Because what the data analytics professionals can do once they understand that context is really start to think about, well, what data do we have available and how can we help you achieve those goals? And so what I would say for leaders of data teams is, what you need to do is make sure that you have processes in place to make sure that your team is able to connect with the right resources and the right people to learn that domain knowledge. And again, because you don't want it to live in their heads, you want to make sure it's documented and you have ways for your team members to, discuss and share and really kind of just keep that going as the undercurrent of everything that you do in your organization.
Very good point for people to take away with them. So to our audience, if you've just picked up on segment 2 and you've listened to this, I'm sure you've got a lot of value out of it, but you might want to swing back and find segment 1 and listen to that as well. It'll give you a good context for the discussion we've just had. Caitlin, thank you very much for joining me once again. And this has been a great discussion, and I'm sure everyone's going to derive great value from this. So best of luck with everything in the future for you and your team.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciated being here.
Excellent. One final point to the audience. Please continue just to visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews, and thanks for joining us.